Episode 11 with Joel Triska. Hey everybody, you're listening to the Never Forsaken podcast, looking at the lives of the outcasts, the seekers, the never forsakens, those in or out of the local church and passionate about Christ. The show is broadcast weekly, and show notes and more information can be found at neverforsakenpodcast.com. I'm your host, John Robinson. Let's get into the show. Thank you, podcast listeners, for tuning in to another episode of the Never Forsaken podcast. My guest today is Joel Triska, and he's the resident philosopher of a group or ministry called Life in Deep Ellum. Joel, welcome to the show.
Yeah, glad to be a part of it.
Joel, a little confusing. If you could clear up for us, when I was researching on your website, Life in Deep Ellum, I was a little confused as to, is this a church? Is this some kind of a ministry? Was it a coffee shop or something else completely? If you could perhaps explain exactly what is Life in Deep Ellum.
Yeah, it's a very common question, so don't feel too discouraged. A lot of people have that kind of confusion, and we call it intentional ambiguity on our end. We kind of want that response. Yeah, we have a cultural center. Our building is a cultural center, has a coffee shop, it has an art gallery. We lease out space to local businesses. We're an event venue as well. But yes, we have a church that meets on Sunday mornings that my wife and I oversee, and we're the pastors of. And people will ask us, are you a cultural center or are you a church? And I'll just say, yes. And so that's our approach has been to kind of look at the way our building integrates into the neighborhood. Deep Ellum is a very unique pocket here in urban Dallas. It's probably one of the more historical neighborhoods here, mostly old buildings. And the history of Deep Ellum has kind of been a history for where the marginalized gathered. So early 1900s, it's where deep down Elm Street, and it was all mostly Eastern European immigrants. So mostly Jewish entrepreneurs and recently freed black slaves, and so it was an early freeman's town. And so it was this area deep down Elm Street, and everyone referred to it as Deep Ellum because that's how they pronounced Elm. And so this area was a place where a lot of jazz and bars and stuff like that happened. And nowadays it's got that same kind of vibe where kind of the disenfranchised of the Dallas area. Dallas is kind of known for its pretension, and Deep Ellum's where you keep it real. And so I have a building that reflects the neighborhood. We strongly believe that as the church, we shouldn't be an intrusion in the neighborhood, but we should integrate. And so the way we say it is we want to be a church not just in a community, but for a community.
So it's a very artistic building from what I can see, and everything's very art-oriented, as opposed to a lot of churches that you see are more look like a bank or look like an office building. I think it's pretty special that you reflect the community and the art and the music, the commerce, which generates this community. And those are actually your four pillars of Life in Deep Ellum. That's kind of like your way of life. So how did those ideas develop? And in other words, it's kind of an area where, say, the disenfranchised have gathered, and you gave that excellent history. Was that your mindset starting out with Life in Deep Ellum? That's what you wanted to do, or did you actually start as a church and then develop into a community center?
Yeah, it was the latter. My wife and I have been pastoring since 2009, so the early incarnation of the church. And I say I'll speak in the we because I kind of own the story, even though my wife and I weren't here in the early stages. But it was a very traditional church, meeting in like bars and places like that, and then got our own space. But it was not connecting with the neighborhood. It was like a bunch of suburbanites coming in on Sunday mornings and leaving at the crack of noon, and you might get a token homeless guy here or there, but mostly it was not connecting with the neighborhood because it was not speaking the language. You might think Dallas, Texas, well, everyone's a Christian over there. Well, and Deep Ellum is like a little pocket of post-Christendom in the big red state, and so it wasn't connecting. And so we just took the mentality of what missionaries have been doing for hundreds of years, and that is you have to listen and learn from your community. And so we partnered with a sociological program at Baylor University out of Waco, Texas, and they helped us do what's called a strengths assessment of the community. And so what that is, instead of looking at all the weaknesses, and there were plenty of weaknesses in Deep Ellum when it came to drugs and crime and all this kind of stuff, instead of doing what the church typically does, is try to go in and fix things, we decided to look at the strengths, and our interpretation is that's where the Holy Spirit's already moving in a community, so why not discover what those are and get behind them? And through these about 1,000 surveys we did on the street, the sociological program at Baylor helped us coalesce that data, and the 4 strengths that came out of that were art, music, commerce, and community. And so our building reflects those. That's our 4 pillars of the cultural center. And it's interesting, sometimes pastors will come in and look through our building, and they'll be kind of enamored with the art gallery and like all the different kind of aesthetics, and like, this is so cool. And we always have to like kind of push back on them and say, hey, look, I know this is cool. It is cool. But it's cool because it's Deep Ellum. If you took our philosophy to West Texas, we'd have a rodeo.
Right.
We are this way because our neighborhood is. We're not trying to be cool. We're trying to connect.
So how specifically then, or what are some specific ways, how are you reaching the community? I can understand these 4 pillars, but how exactly is that happening? Through art shows?
Well, that's yeah, I mean, we definitely bring people to our building through events and things like that of that nature. But over a long period of time, it's just like we built relationships. So I sit on the Deep Ellum Foundation, which is where property owners sit. So it's kind of like your chamber of commerce for our neighborhood, and we administer tax dollars to help beautification of the streets and neighborhood. My wife is on the executive team of what's called the Deep Ellum Community Association, which is a grassroots organization that does all sorts of things in the neighborhood, from volunteering, events. They put in an urban gardens, a bark park. And so we are extraordinarily involved in the neighborhood. If there's anything that's happening, we're involved somehow. And even it affects the way we staff. Like, we don't have traditional staff members. We have a coffee shop manager. We have a community liaison. We have an art, a gallery curator. We staff around our mission rather than around our ministry.
That's pretty incredible. So you mentioned the coffee shop here, the coffee bar. That's called Moka, is that correct?
That's right, Moka Coffee Bar.
So Moka Coffee Bar, you consider that to be a ministry? That's part of your actual church building?
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. And so for us, that's kind of like the hospitality for our building. It's open 7 to 7 throughout the week. And so we have people that work and live around who come and, they work out of our coffee shop, and it's kind of like coming in Cheers. Our baristas know people's names. But, we always tell other pastors, are like, we don't have receptionists, we have baristas. That's the way we kind of create an open format to the community. And it's obviously the people who come into our building don't always know that there's a church. Sometimes they're in our building 2 or 3 times before they even realize a faith community meets here. But we get to talk about that in conversation with these people, and it's nice because if they are disenfranchised, if they are people who aren't believers or who are skeptical of institutional religion, their guard are down because they've met us on neutral playing field, a place where they feel like a connection's already happened. Whereas if we had church or ministry up on the front of our building, or if our architecture kind of resembled religion, I think walls would initially be up, and it would totally skew our conversations.
Right, kind of as opposed to like, in your face street evangelism too. You're kind of doing that.
Absolutely, yeah.
You're kind of doing that, but not really. It seems like. Like, let's say like with the art shows, you've got art shows and different things like that. How are they strictly to focus on the art, or how do you tie
Absolutely.
the gospel? Okay, yeah. So what I'm asking, like, does the gospel tie into that, or is it something separate that just creates the open door?
Well, initially it's a goal to create an open door, trying to create inroads into the community. And so not even all of our artists are Christians. We're trying to create a legitimate gallery that connects with a very difficult artistic community. Artistic communities, whatever city you're in, are kind of niche-y. and so it's difficult to break into those. Some of our artists are Christians, but I would not call anything Christian art. They're, artists who have people of faith, and they're expressing through various mediums of art. And I would say the gospel is connected, not in the sense of proselytizing or evangelizing, but the gospel is present in the sense of saying all are welcome. This is a place where everyone is included, even the far away. There's a place for you to be who you are, to meet. And we invite every artist, even the non-Christians, to share on our Sunday morning gatherings about the show. Usually we have a show about every 6 weeks, and that artists, and a lot of them say yes. Even the non-Christians will come in and talk about the story behind their art, and it creates a great atmosphere for our people in the faith community to learn about the show, to learn about the artists, and also for the artists to feel like they're accepted to come as they are, to be who they are, and converse with people of faith.
Well, it seems like that you're recapturing this lost art of listening that I don't think that the church has, as a whole, has been really good at lately.
No, we're good talkers.
Yeah. So like a lot of evangelism is telling somebody either what they're doing wrong and what they need to do to make it right. And it's pretty refreshing to see that that's not what you guys are doing. You're doing something that's radically different.
Yeah, and it sometimes raises eyebrows, and we can understand that some people are afraid. We get called all kinds of labels and of the liberal spectrum, but I would say my wife and I both are seminary trained, and our theology is well within what's considered orthodox. We do stretch interpretations of what it means to orthopraxy, what it really means to, like you said, listen and allow people to impact you. We strongly believe that, it's not our job to save people. That's the Holy Spirit's job. We have no power to convert. We will plant and water, but it's God's job to make the seeds grow. And so we're just trying to be faithful witnesses to as many people as we possibly can, especially those that have written the church off.
Well, Joel, I was going to comment on the theology, and along those lines, I'm glad you brought that up, because going through the website, it's like, all right, they're really focused on arts, coffee, and this really liberal-ish, kind of mentality. And I listened to several of the podcasts, and then I was like, this isn't what I expected. I was expecting something that was really kind of wishy-washy and watered down, because you do hear that message in some churches that's, oh, God loves you.
Absolutely.
But no, yeah, you were getting into some deep C.S. Lewis and good sound doctrine, Joel. I commend you guys for that as well.
Yeah, we feel like the church is very, not very skilled at combining orthodoxy and innovation. We choose one or the other, and my wife and I strongly believe that the two can happen at the same time.
So perhaps, Joel, could you share maybe a brief story or two about, you don't have to use anyone's name, but any kind of like person who's really had their life radically transformed by the work that Life in Deep Ellum is doing?
Sure. I'll share two quick stories. And I'll use their names. They don't mind. I share their stories a lot. One guy is a guy named Will. Will grew up rigidly Roman Catholic. And when I first met Will, he's a spoken word artist, super duper gifted. When I first met him, he would say he had an allergy to Jesus. So it was kind of like fleeing religion in that sense. But he was very involved in the artistic community of Dallas. He started an event called Diverse Lounge, which is a big deal now. Him and his team actually presented at a TEDx talk recently.
Well, that's big.
It's huge, and he just basically, they have this great atmosphere where they let teens. It's under 21 event where teens and middle schoolers and some college read poems, and it's a real affirming event. It's uncensored, so there's a lot of just everything from talk. You'll hear poems about kids who grew up not knowing their dad and their anger with God or their gender confusion. It's very, very open and uncensored in that sense, but a very affirming environment. And so we as a cultural center wanted to partner with Will. We brought him on as a community partner, and I sat him down in my office one Sunday and was talking about this, and I told him, hey, we got this thing, the gathering that meets on Sunday mornings. I want to let you know you're welcome, but to be a community partner with us, there's zero expectation that you go to that. You don't have to go at all. And I didn't know at the time, but that really impacted him to say that there was no expectation there. And about a year later, in our partnership, him and his family show up on a Sunday morning.
Wow.
And now they're deeply integrated in the fabric of our faith community. And my wife and I asked him one time, I was like, Will, why did you stay around? And his quote was so perfect. I use it all the time. He said, it's what you guys do Monday through Saturday that made me give Sundays a chance.
Wow.
And it's what you guys do Sundays that is restoring my faith in Jesus.
Yeah, and it's a process as opposed to the traditional altar call or confronting this guy and forcing him to pray with you or whatnot.
And those tactics work for people who are already Christians.
Sure.
They're basically already in the Christian worldview. They basically have already been assimilated into that kind of culture, whereas people outside of that, those tactics are counterproductive. And so let me just share one other story real quick. This is a guy who lives across the alleyway from us. His name's Sean, and he's the president of the Deep Ellum Community Association. He's kind of like one of the gatekeepers in our neighborhood regarding just his amount of respect. And we always joke that on a good day, Sean's an agnostic. On a bad day, he's an atheist. And so he definitely has major issues with institutional religion and major issues with the typical Texan evangelical who all vote Republican, own 10 guns, and will be quick to tell you you're going to hell.
Right,
so he has major issues with that. And he was very skeptical of us when we first came into Deep Ellum. Well, over time, though, we were able to just serve without any strings attached. And he realized we were some of the more faithful and willing volunteers. We slowly worked our way into leadership. And, when you're in Deep Ellum, this is a very transitional kind of area, urban area. So if you're here for over 5 years, you're a veteran. And my wife was talking with Sean in our coffee shop, I think it was last year, and she was kind of bemoaning to him how sometimes it's difficult to explain to other churches what we do. And he didn't really understand. And then he said, I don't get it. You guys just get behind whatever is good in the neighborhood. You're like a hub for the community. And I remember my wife, she told me, her eyes opened real big, and she was like, oh my gosh, you're saying what we've always tried to be. And out of the mouth of an agnostic.
Yeah, he got it.
And he got it. And he will never come to faith, and that's God's job, but our friendship with him is deep. We have very open, authentic conversations about spirituality and the Bible with him all the time. But the one thing that I know is accomplished, whether he ever comes to faith or not, is that he may have this perception of the church or Christians that's negative, but now he has to put a little asterisk by it and says, yeah, the church and Christians are blah, 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 except for these guys. They're not like that at all.
That's powerful. So Joel, is this a model that you think, can it work in other churches, or what type of approach does a church have to take to do what you're doing?
That's a fantastic question. We actually sometimes consult with other churches, and it is way easier to start it from the beginning versus trying to transition a church. That just because some of the structures are so in place, and it's difficult to, we change the way we fund our mission is very different. Like only half of our income comes from the faith community, so the other half of what we do is funded by our mission. So we have leases, we have rentals, we have all these other things that are engaging the community that help pay for our building and our expenses and operations. So we don't have the pressure to grow as a church. That gives us the freedom to reach people who take a lot longer time to come to faith. Either we try to talk to these mega churches who are planting satellites, trying to convince them, hey, don't build a mini-me, build a building that your church satellite can use, but the building is for the neighborhood. So get to know the neighborhood, ask them what they need, and that's one way to engage the neighborhood. But other churches, we talk to them, and one of the best things that you can do is find partnerships. Anyone can partner. The problem is that a lot of churches really hesitate, and they only want to partner with people who are just like them. And so try to partner with people who aren't like you. Find the common ground with an organization that's doing something really good. Maybe it's around, funding awareness for something like sex trafficking, or something that obviously the church will get behind. But it's also building relationships with people who aren't connected to the church. And so finding those community partnerships, praying for God to bring the right kinds of people to partner with. And we have learned all kinds of lessons through that. And who are the right people to partner, who are the right people not. But I don't know that our lessons are transferable to everyone. I think everyone has to go out and learn their own lessons, and that's the beauty of creating these partnerships where the church is organic rather than a kind of plug-and-play model.
Yeah, I think it's a great approach that you guys are taking, Joel. It's not like it's not one of these things that a pastor's going to learn at one of their denominational seminars. It seems like It comes with a lot of trial and error.
Absolutely, and that's what's fun about it.
Yeah, you got to kind of stretch the boundaries a bit. You made a comment about people, churches reaching out to different parts of the community or to different organizations, but that could be, that's somebody really has to go outside their bubble for that.
We feel like what we've done here to train our faith community, what happens on Sunday mornings, is we've worked really, really hard to not let there be a bubble. Of course, our services are very authentic. We just did like a 2-year series going through the book of Acts, so we're very centered on the Bible. The Apostles' Creed is our statement of faith together, but it also is an environment where people who aren't believers feel very comfortable. Like, I don't know how many times we've heard people say, hey, this is the first church that I've ever been at where I feel comfortable to bring my fill in the blank, my alcoholic dad, or my gay sister, or, and they feel comfortable to bring their friends or family who are disenfranchised from the church. And what that means is it's the product of slowly getting rid of the bubble so that you're not walking into a subculture when you come into our doors. And there's a sense where we in here are people of faith just living on our faith in the real world. And then when we leave, we're not stepping into the world. We're always just kind of flitting around. Wherever we're flitting around, our faith is authentic, and our engagement with the world is real as well.
Last thing, Joe, I'll just ask is, what are the future plans for life in Deep Ellum? What can we expect from your ministry in the future?
Well, we used to have all kinds of plans of trying to expand, but I think that was more or less leftovers from my wife and I's foray in the church growth world. Both of us cut our teeth on that kind of all that church growth ministry, so we thought we were going to build other life in this neighborhood, life in that neighborhood. But now we really feel a call to just empower our people to echo what we do in Deep Ellum wherever they're living. So we're hoping, we have a lot of relationships in the missional church world. If you read people like Alan Hirsch and Michael Frost and these Hugh Holter, these kinds of people, we build a lot of connections trying to help the church think about what does it look like when my faith is active in my neighborhood and at my work. And these aren't new questions. Obviously, the evangelical church has been trying to do this for a long time. I think we just have hindered our ability to do that because of the bubble. And if we break the bubble down, I think it's going to open up our ability to engage the world around us. It means two things. Number one, we're going to have more bravery in engaging and accepting people who are not like us. And number two, it means that we need to have a stronger, deeper connection personally with Jesus, because when we start engaging the world around us, sometimes it is tempting to kind of let go of our faith in order to accommodate others. So we have to have a strong bravery engaging others and a strong connection with Jesus when we do so.
Joel, sounds like you have your work cut out for you. You're doing a great job. From what I can read, it's man, I wish I lived a little closer. I'd be checking you guys out on Sunday.
Oh, we'd love to have you, man.
One of these days, I will get there. Well, Joel, I thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate what you guys are doing. It's very refreshing to see a ministry that's passionate about Christ and at the same time bringing the arts into the church, which is something that's been lost for so long, I think. And you guys have really, you got a very smooth combination of it, and I think you guys are doing a great work.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Not a problem, Joel. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. God bless.
God bless.